at the South Asia Literature and Art Festival in 2022, when I introduced the panel where he was speaking to Vikram Chandra, author of Sacred Games, discussing the difference in the portrayal of Bombay/Mumbai in Sacred Games and that of Salman Rushdie in Midnight's Children. It was one of the most quietly handled interviews with much in-depth study that had helped Salil come up with the most provocative questions. I was very impressed. So who is Salil Tripathi? For one thing, he is a person with a lot of friends that I recently found out. Whoever I have met in the past 1 month who I have invited to the talk have either exclaimed that they've already been invited by him or have spoken to him during his research on this book, or have been his schoolmates from the century-old New Era School in Mumbai, or have known him from his several award-winning journalistic and writing assignments as foreign correspondent and human rights researcher in his travels across the globe, and helped him author 3 works of non-fiction, one of them being The Colonel Who Would Not Repent, The Bangladesh War and Its Unquiet Legacy. So who is Salil Tripathi? He is the great-grandnephew of Govardhan Ram Tripathi, author of the 19th century Gujarati classic Saraswati Chandra. So will the real Salil Tripathi now stand up and come here and tell us everything about Gujaratis that we may know, but more importantly, that we do not know? Thank you.
It's a great honor to be here, and it's wonderful to see Dr. Ratan Parimo here and getting to see his art, because I've heard about it a lot from his daughter, Gauri, an old friend from Singapore. I'm very pleased to see her today and delighted to know that the film was made by within the family. So it's really wonderful to be here for that reason. I want to thank the Vadodara Heritage Society and Trust for doing me the great honor of letting me speak in this wonderful city about my writing and my new book. The book is called The Gujaratis, a portrait of a community. If I have to describe it in one phrase, it is about who we are and why we are the way we are. And it is a journey through our people. V.S. Naipaul called his journey through the Islamic world Among the Believers. And I would have wanted to call mine Among the Gujaratis, but my editor thought that wasn't a good title. For I become a witness, an observer, and at times a participant. At times I feel sympathy, at other times empathy, but there are times where I felt repelled by what I have seen. I've tried to see and celebrate the best that the people speaking my language have to offer, and there are times where I've shown where we have succumbed to our worst instincts. I'm of Gujarat, but not from Gujarat. I wasn't born here, though I visited the state often. I speak the language, I count in it, I dream in it. But I've grown up in Bombay or Mumbai, a city which is as cosmopolitan as they can get, with its lingua franca being what Salman Rushdie once called Hug Me. Hindi, Urdu, Gujarati, Marathi, English. A combination like pav bhaji, though I'm aware in Gujarat you call it bhaji pav. And with Vadodara's own strong Marathi links and affinity and Gujarati roots, the increasingly wider prevalence of Hindi on the streets, and by implication of Urdu, and the ease and familiarity with English, India's real linked language, which again, as Rushdie showed us, we own as much as the English do, Vadodara in a way feels like home. It feels home for 2 other reasons. One is personal and the other is cultural. The personal is that my uncle, Kulin Chandra Yagnik, who died at the age of 97 last year, and who was enormously helpful to me in understanding the Gujarati mind when I was writing this book, was a district collector here. I remember as a young boy visiting his family during our long summer vacations at his bungalow in Alkapuri, being taken round the city and shown its sights, and losing spectacularly to my cousin Neeraj, who is somewhere in the audience, at badminton, in the open badminton court at the collector's bungalow. The cultural reason has an emotional pull. I went to a Gujarati medium school in Mumbai called New Era. I would not be surprised if in the audience today there are some who also went to the same school as I did. Indeed, I didn't meet Pranav here Pranav Doshi, who was a year junior to me. That school was inspired by Gandhi and Tagore, and its inclusive ethos had a major role in shaping us and how we turned out. We had a terrific library with books in Gujarati and English, and some of us discovered a writer with the name Suresh Joshi. And we were stunned and mesmerized by his profound knowledge of our past and fiercely competitive outlook that celebrated the modern, introducing us to Western thought. We made amazing discoveries, not only of his writing, but we were awed by the cultural power of Vadodara of the 60s and 70s. If Vienna at the turn of the last century, 1900s, represented one kind of zenith, Karl Emil Schorsky has written an amazing book about it called Fin de siècle, Vienna, whose giants included Gustav Klimt, Sigmund Freud, and Stefan Zweig. When art, psychology, writing, and music brought about a renaissance in that city, there was another city, Paris, in the 1920s, when Gertrude Stein held forth from her apartment in Paris, surrounded by Ford Madox Ford, Pablo Picasso, F. Scott Fitzgerald and his mercurial wife Zelda, and of course the great Ernest Hemingway and his first wife Hadley Richardson, as Cubism and sparse modern writing flourished, while Sylvia Beach ran that memorable bookstore, Shakespeare and Company. The zeitgeist of Vadodara of the late 60s and 70s, to my untrained eye, showed the flowering of Indian modernity in a very, very significant way. In my book, I celebrate that time. I'm not here to tell you what you already know. I'm here to cheer and take delight in recalling what it has meant to me as a fan of this city's diversity. How MS University became the beehive of intellectual activity, Suresh Joshi, of course, but the dramaturge Birje Patil, the artist N.S. Bendre, the sculptor Sanko Chaudhary, the artist and pedagogue K.G. Subramaniam, the artist and designer Jairam Patel, the dancer, dance scholar and choreographer Mohan Khokar, the poet and critic and writer Sitanshu Yashashchandra, the artist, poet and essayist Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh, and the linguist, author and activist Ganesh Devi. It's a galaxy, and the city should be so proud. And I must not forget the man who taught us accounting, a dry subject of figures. Even though he used to joke, he was interested in figures of another kind, the dancing apsaras and terpsichores. I mean Sunil Kothari, who taught us accounting. Not everyone was born in this city, but they made it their home and helped form a unique culture. When I was writing this book, I met Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh, and he told me, for us, this was a mini India, a multiple India. We felt like we were initiators, building a new India. We were not confined to the singular. We lived a life which was not just a life lived, but a life shared, imagined, and enjoyed, he said. Collaborations, critical and creative, of course, as well as romantic, occurred. Ghulam Bhai's life partner Nilima is an amazing artist. There was a Dean Markan Bhatt and Parvez, Bendre and Mona, Subramaniam and Sushila, and of course, Ratan Bhai and Naina Ben. And how can we forget Bhupen Khakkar, who not only redefined the narrative figurative tradition of our art, but also injected biting satire and humor in his work. India, at its best, came together in this city. Over the years, I learned much from these masters. From Khakkar, how to poke fun at ourselves. From Sitanshu, pushing the limits of imagination with nods to surrealism and our ancient wisdom. From Sheikh, lamenting the upsurge in violence with vivid and lurid colors. Suresh Joshi, using vivid imagination and striking metaphors, examining life, love, and death. Ganesh Devi, celebrating and preserving our vanishing languages. And elsewhere in the city, for some time, Anil Joshi, observing a collective descent into communal madness. So I come to Vadodara as a well-wisher, as a student, and as a deep admirer. And I want to share how such inclusive and aesthetic sensibilities have helped me understand who we are and why we are the way we are. For the book I've written over the past 8 years, The Gujaratis, arose out of a question from my editor, David Devidar. He had published a book on the Bengalis written by my friend Sudeep Chakravarti. David was keen to have a series of such books outlining India's communities and rich diversity. The series now has 2 more books, one on the Assamese by Sangeeta Barua Pisharuti and on the Tamils by Nirmala Lakshman, and there are more to follow. What would you write about if you were to write about the Gujaratis? He asked me. I spoke in a way that was probably pure stream of consciousness. I spoke of my personal life, what I knew about Gujarat and Gujaratis, what I needed to know, and the discoveries that I might make. My older son Udayan, who was at that time 25, was with me in David's office, listening intently. David had to step out to take a call and left his office briefly. Udayan turned to me and said, "Dad, You have to write this book. I want to read it. That was a spur I needed. David returned in a few minutes, and before I could continue, he said, Salil, the book is yours. You know the story. Write it the way you want to tell it. Take 2 years. I took 8. I thought it would be easy. I thought I knew the language, some of its literature. There are poems I can recite without having to look at the text. And I had reported on the state. I might be able to finish it 2 years. But the more I read and researched, the more I realized how little I knew. Every conversation, then there are more than 200 interviews in this book, and contrary to what one critic has claimed, only 10 or less are related to me. The others are people I met for the first time, trust me. And fewer than 20 of those are those I went to school or college with. And like a sensible reporter, I meet contacts and stay in touch, and they end up becoming friends. But each is in the book because they've earned that spot, because they knew something I didn't, and they helped me understand myself and my people. And the story is about what I learned about Gujaratis from conversations with the people who care about Gujarati society and culture across the world. I am a Gujarati, and mine is an individual interpretation of who we are and the way we are. The book is not an encyclopedia. I take a very expansionist definition of who a Gujarati is. The one who speaks the language, counts in it, dreams in it, thinks in it. The one who has moved to the land where Gujarati is spoken by the majority. The ones who may speak other languages but have made Gujarat their home and preserved their minority identities. I have people like Father Bayesh in my mind. And the ones who may live, and who of course Gujaratis call Father Wallace, I should clarify. And the ones who may live anywhere else in the world but are of Gujarati heritage. Gujarati is a language, not a religion, nor a caste. So the Gujaratis you will meet in the pages of my book belong to all strata of society and include Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, Jains, Buddhists, Dalits, Christians, and others who identify with other ethnicities or maybe of no faith. As two of India's most prominent political leaders today are Gujarati, and two of India's leading business tycoons are Gujaratis, and since Gujaratis form nearly a quarter of the wealthiest Indians, there's a natural curiosity about us. Who we are, what has made us the way we are, and why do we act the way we do. Many think that they know quite a bit about us already and have formed strong opinions about us, that we are vegetarian and we are supposed to be clever at making money. We are practical, pragmatic. We murder the finest cuisines in the world by adding sugar and Amul cheese to everything, transforming Punjabi, Chinese and Italian food that the Punjabis, Chinese and Italians would never recognize. When we travel, we expect to eat dhokla and gantia in Amritsar, Shanghai or Rome. We generously share our snacks, which we pronounce as snakes. And we have food taboos that exasperate our hosts. No onion or garlic on Fridays. Puri is only made of Rajagrano lot in the month of Shravan. Many of us piously say we are vegetarian, and then late evening, when our family is glued to Arnab Goswami on television, we tiptoe out and visit the hawker's cart down the alley to eat omelets. The more adventurous ones among us even develop a taste for kebabs. And we bury its taste by chewing pan before returning home so that nobody can suspect our postprandial indiscretions. And we break into Garba at the slightest pretext. Garba has near religious significance. What goes round and comes round doesn't mean karma. For us, it means Garba. Our poets and writers may not be well known because others think that the only book we care about is a ledger. We are obsessed with success, which we feel can be measured objectively only through money. Paiso bole chhe. We know that money talks. Even at funerals, you might find some men discussing stock market prices while looking suitably glum, randomly folding their hands and doing namaste when someone passes by. We can walk into a restaurant, brazenly ask for 1 cup of tea with 3 saucers, which we'll share with our friends. We buy newspapers for 4 rupees and 8 of us share it, because making paisa vasool is our birthright. We haggle with a hapless call center worker for an hour on the phone to get 20 rupees refunded. Others smirk at our meticulous planning, but entrust the logistics of organizing complex events to us. They find it hilarious that we wave the tricolour vigorously, but rarely join the army. Actually, some of us do. They think we are cowards, and we point at the man whose photograph is on the currency notes of India, except the old 1 rupee note, Mohandas Gandhi, and claim we are non-violent. But as to non-violence, that's another story, as we periodically erupt in gruesome violence, massacring hundreds of our own. India alone has 55 million people who consider Gujarat to be their mother tongue, at about 4.5% of the population. And possibly there are 6 billion more of us abroad on every continent, if not in every country. 1 out of every 3 Indians abroad is supposed to be a Gujarati. But cliches abound. Not all of us are vegetarians. Indeed, one of the most comprehensive surveys of Gujaratis ever undertaken shows increased meat consumption among Gujaratis. Only 76 of the nearly 300 Gujarati communities surveyed by the Anthropological Survey of India said they ate only vegetarian food, a substantially higher proportion than the national average of 16. But some 130 communities, or nearly half, said they ate meat occasionally. Not all of us are good at making money either. And as a long list of corporate scandals shows, not all Gujarati business people are necessarily ethical. Nor are all of us Gandhian ascetics. Many of us love our gold and diamonds. The jewelry shops at Zaveri Bazaar and Opera House in Mumbai have Gujarati owners, Gujarati staff, and many patrons are Gujarati. We have run motels in America, fought apartheid in South Africa, been expelled from Uganda, formed trade unions in London, sold opium to China, financed Subhash Chandra Bose's Indian National Army in Southeast Asia. We dominate the list of India's wealthiest people, and yet our poor people break ships in Alang and clean drains in Mumbai. Hospitable yet calculating, mercantile and pragmatic, pious and yet tolerating violence, worldly wise while claiming to be spiritual, cheerful and transactional. We see nothing wrong with our contradictions. In the 1970s and 80s, Adi Marzban, the famous Parsi theatre director, who also edited his family newspaper, Jame Jamshed, hosted an extremely popular television show in Gujarati in Bombay. It had humorous gags, magic tricks, music performances, skits, jokes, and homilies that never failed to entertain. Avo Mari Sathe, it was called. Come with me. And so I tell my readers at the beginning of my book, come with me as I explore the complexities of my people, how we earn, how we politic, how we learn, how we create, how we pray, how we give, how we eat, how we play, how we love, and how we kill. I begin by exploring whence we came and take us to a journey through Dholavira and Lothal, seeing the drainage system and the care with which water was conserved by the Gujaratis who lived there before it was called Gujarat. I follow the footsteps of Bhagwan Lal Indraji, the self-taught archaeologist and historian who deciphered the stone carvings near Gir and helped us make sense of our past. I then go to Somnath to understand why the temple was so significant in our sensibility, why the attacks on the temple had such a significant impact on our minds, and why its restoration was so important for Sardar Patel and Kanhaiya Munshi, and yet why Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru stayed away from the idea of the government paying for its restoration. Then came the Sultans, and the Chalukya period became part of our nostalgia, a collectivistic, atavistic longing and yearning. Mahajans came later, establishing commercial order, and wealth grew, so did the predators, and from the south, Shivaji and his Maratha army raided Surat. Crippling taxes by the sultans and the looting by the Maratha invaders led Gujarati traders into the arms of the British, who promised the rule of law and commercial freedom in an island with India's finest natural harbour, Bombay. I then recount the division of the state into Maharashtra and Gujarat, how Marathi trade unionists projected Gujarati capitalists as outsiders, how the Gujarati chief minister of the state at that time, Morarji Desai, tried keeping Bombay unique and distinct, the sad violence that followed, and how Bombay became Marathi and Gujarati merged, a geographically united but culturally separated land comprising of Kutch, which might be closer to Sindh in many respects, princely states of Saurashtra, some run poorly, some indifferently, and some, like Baroda, run superbly. Gujarat itself and the so-called tribal belt forming the spine of the state. I then celebrate the cities where Gujaratis thrived. In a chapter called Ame Mumbai Na Rehvasi, I speak of the emerging Gujarati middle class. In the chapter called Manchester of the East, I write about the mills of Ahmedabad and of moneybends and moneyed bhais. In Surat, Sonani Murat, I cheer the wealth the city generated and lamented its decline. And in Vadodara, I salute the banyan tree, which offers the shade and respite and lets the arts thrive. But then there is the sea, India's largest coastline. And I hear the Gujarati ears heeding to the call and heading for the coast, following the heart, pushed by the drought, pulled by the promise of prosperity, to Socotra, to Aden, to Muscat, to Mombasa, to Jinja, to Zanzibar, to Dar es Salaam, to Durban, Malacca, Singapore, Java, Hong Kong. Java je e nar gayo, pacho na ave kyaye. પાછો જો આવે તો પેઢીઓ પેઢી ખાય. Everyone didn't go abroad to make money. The man who went to Java probably never came back, but if he did come back, generations prospered. But everyone didn't go abroad, as I said, to make money. I celebrate the brave Indians who fought the apartheid. Freni Jinwala wearing resplendent saris and Speaker of the South African Assembly when Nelson Mandela was the president. Ahmad Kathrada, who spent 28 years with Mandela breaking rock at the Robben Island Museum, at the Robben Island jail, which is now a museum. Ismail Mir, who ran a newspaper and knew Gandhi. Fatima Mir, his daughter, the biographer of Mandela. Amina Kachalia, who stood when she was pregnant at the Union Buildings in Pretoria, singing Ankosi Sikelele Africa. Her son Galeb, who is now a parliamentarian. Manilal Gandhi, the Mahatma's son, and his children, Sita, Arun, and Ila. I recall the Patel family that celebrated the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. And I remember Vasant Desai, who helped write the constitution of Zambia. True, Karimji Jivanji, Ali Dina Visram, Manubhai Madhwani, and Nanji Kalidas Mehta prospered enormously in East Africa. But Madhwani and 70,000 other British Asians, many of them Gujaratis, were expelled from Uganda in 1972. I recount their story. The strange dilemma where vegetarian Gujaratis and devout Muslim Gujaratis turn up at an airport, Stansted in London, and well-meaning volunteers offer them ham sandwich, which neither could eat. And I recount their journey and rise to prosperity in England and elsewhere as they transform cities like Leicester and some like Priti Patel and Shailesh Vara rising to great heights in British politics. Gujaratis also taught a thing or two to the British. Napoleon used to call Britain the nation, or England the nation of shopkeepers. But the real shopkeepers who taught how to run a shop properly were Gujaratis. They transformed the retail space. Because the English shopkeeper wanted to close the shop at 5 in the evening and go home and watch the telly, the Gujaratis stayed open almost 24 hours, at least 18 hours a day, even on Sundays, changing the trading laws and eroding the monopoly of large supermarkets. But there are also Gujaratis in the UK, like Ash Kotak, who fought for gay rights, Pragna Patel, who championed women's rights, and Jayaben Desai, who spearheaded workers' rights and formed the first ever trade union of people of color and women of color. We went east too, helping spread Islam in Indonesia through our trade, supporting the Indian National Army with money, gold, as well as logistics, experts like Girish Kothari in Singapore, and the story of two young women, one who was 16, one who was 18, Rama and Neelam Mehta of Rangoon, daughters of Pranjivan Mehta, who was with Gandhi on that boat, which led to the writing of Hind Swaraj, and Rama and Neelam Mehta marching with Captain Lakshmi as part of Rani of Jhansi regiment. Again, Gujaratis. And then that final frontier to cross which is the dream of so many Gujaratis. Abhishek Jain has even made a film called Kevi Rite Jaish. How will you get there? And Gujaratis found ingenious ways to overcome barricades to reach America. We end up running 2 or 3 of every 5 motels in America, but we also fall and succumb trying to enter the country illegally and perishing in sub-zero temperatures on the Canadian border. We have the good, the bad, and the ugly among us, too. In America, Chandrakant Shah wrote of a fresh and electric voice about Gujarati life overseas, and Panna Nayak continues to celebrate the snow. Bhairavi Desai united taxi drivers in New York. An organization called Sakhi was formed for domestic violence. Again, many of the people who promoted it were Gujaratis. Zubin Mehta with music and Ismail Merchant by producing films transformed the art scene there. Kash Patel might roll back many hard-won civil liberties Americans have taken for granted. So there is ugliness too. I then turn to our obsession with money, not to preserve it and conserve it, but to make it work. We venerate Lakshmi and honor Kubera. We rely on trust, the Angadiya carrying our gems, the spoken word taken as a bond, the Padiku with diamonds, which is never tempered with an Palanpuri's trust, and now Kathiawadi's too. We believe in reaching the stars, building and accumulating businesses, as Dhirubhai Ambani did, identifying the need of working women who they had, but they hadn't articulated, clothes that are easy to maintain, and who brought about the polyester revolution. But if you make polyester clothing, why not the yarn? And why not sell the byproduct? And if you make yarn at Patalganga, why not make the petrochemicals in Hazira? And after that, why not refine the oil in Jamnagar? And in that case, why not explore oil? And if you write oil in large letters, turn it around or put it in front of a mirror, it reads Geo. So why not build businesses that make life easier with a product or a service for every need catering to the aspirational class? If it made Reliance a conglomerate, there were other examples before that. Tata is foremost of them, another distinguished name, which began with steel, made soaps and chemicals and automobiles and salt and hotels and retail and so on and so forth, including the software that formed the backbone of so much of our modern life. So I do marvel at our ingenuity from creating an industry where the raw materials are from Africa and the market is in Europe, America and Japan, and the only skill we have is how to trade, how to cut and polish the stones and turn them into sparkling diamonds. Trading in dangerous terrain and reclaiming an old company with a checkered past in India and turning it into a brand, as Sanjeev Mehta has done with East India Company. Or making India self-reliant in milk when Tribhuvandas Patel first and then V. Kurian ushered in the White Revolution. There are Gujarati fingerprints on India's software boom too. And it is not only the work of Tata Group, but one of the earliest movers in the IT business was Hemant Sonawala and his company Hinditron, and the pioneer in the futuristic artificial intelligence inspired and metaverse specific application is again a Gujarati, Pranav Mistry, who wants to turn the computer into an extension of our bodies and mind rather than turn us into slaves of the machine. And then there is a vibrant Gujarat. Or, as I ask in the chapter, is it flagrant, blatant, belligerent, and strident? To understand that, we have to turn to politics. We are early players in Britain. Not only when Gandhi and Jinnah and Patel went there to study, and Shyamji Krishna Verma, but also when Dadabhai Nauroji, Mancherji Bhavnagri, and Shapurji Saklatwala became the first three parliamentarians who are not white and who are of color to represent themselves in British Parliament. Nauroji being liberal, Bhavnagri being conservative, and Saklatwala being a communist. We cater to every taste. We find Gandhi going as a barrister and settling disputes in South Africa and returning to us as Mahatma. He becomes the saint of Sabarmati and breaks down barriers. He's of the left and the right, and he's at ease with the radicalism of Indulal Yagnik and the conservatism of Sardar Patel. And I salute the people Gandhiji inspires. Ravi Shankar Maharaj, Darshak, Sundaram, Ila Bhatt, Ansuya Sarabhai, Mrunalini Sarabhai, Kulsum Sayani, and years later, Laila Nazar Ali and Tista Setalwad. And then how the state changes, emerging out of Gandhi's shadow and embracing the confident, assertive Gujarat, used to prosperity, which does not distrust business, which manages to convince India to help build the Narmada Dam, which lifts itself from an earthquake and which draws investors in. The astute political mind of Narendra Modi, who senses how India has changed, how it wants to be more assertive, how it wants to discover its own roots even if they may not be as broad as Gandhi envisioned, how it is aspirational, how it is impatient, and how it is a young population not necessarily aware of the history. Being ahistorical has the advantage of not being held back by the past. It also means you rush headlong without paying attention to warning signs and end up embracing an identity far removed from the one Gandhi may have conceived. What is our intellectual basis? So I go to a town not far from here, Nadiyad, my ancestral home. True, it is known as Sakshar Bhumi, the home of Govardhan Ram Tripathi, Manilal Dwivedi and many others. But closer examination of their writings and ideas, including that of Narmad, who hails from Surat, and these are the towns where many of the literators have owe their origin to, but we have to remember that it is the Elphinstone College in Mumbai that shapes their thinking. They have an urban modern sensibility which comes from an urban modern setting. I learned from other writers, Pannalal Patel and Meghani, Munshi and Darsha, Niranjan Bhagat, Kundanika Kapadia, Mirabai, Suresh Joshi and Ramesh Parekh, Varsha Adalja, Dhiruben Patel. I get exasperated by the films of Dollywood or Dollywood. But I see hope in new cinema, Bhavni Bhavai, Helaro, Cello Show and so on. I recall Bhangwadi and its old theatre. And then I recall Kanti Madia and Praveen Joshi's modernity and the Parsi humor. And I hum along with Sugam Sangeet of Avinash Vyas and Shemu Divetia, Kaumudi Munshi and the folk songs of Diwali Ben Bhil and Aditya Gadvi. I'll also look at our faith, our philanthropy, the men and women we revere as gurus, often only to be betrayed by some of them, and how some sampradayas and movements have transformed and how we see ourselves as devotees. And there is food. How can it not be? We turn pizza into a Jasuben delicacy with the bhakris which become pizzas, and introduce an amazing range of flavors to the humble ice cream. We share what we make, but are hesitant about trying other people's food, lest it has onion, garlic, or horrors meat. And we use food as a weapon to keep out people we don't want to live in our residential colonies. We say we are vegetarians, and yet we consume meat when nobody is watching. And how we play cricket. From Ranji, not just Ranji, the first ever test match that India played in 1932 had 4 Gujaratis in the team. Palia, Kola, Amar Singh and Naumal. And from that, we moved from Ranji to Vinu Mankad and Vijay Merchant to Cheteshwar Pujara and Hardik Pandya. From Maharajas who supported the sport, there's a great book by Richard Cashman called Patrons, Players and Crowds about how cricket originated in India. And a lot of Maharaj of Limdi and Navanagar and so many of the Saurashtra princes supported at that time. Of course, so did Patiala. We should not only talk about Gujaratis here who supported the sport. To companies like Mafatlal and Nirlon and Tatas which supported cricketers and recruited them. And to the tens of thousands who throng and fill the world's largest cricket stadium today in Ahmedabad. And how we love, what we think of sex, what do we do when our women love women and men love men. And we kill too. We proclaim our being vegetarian even as bodies burn around us. We ignore the side of the story we find inconvenient by compartmentalizing our thinking. We see a vast part of the city, call it a Muslim ghetto, Juhapura, and think it is a joke when we call it Pakistan. And we divide ourselves. Some of us say, "એ લોકોને સિદ્ધા કરવાની જરૂર હતી." Others who say, "અમને ઇન્સાફ જોઈએ છે, દાન નહીં." They needed to be straightened up, and the other side said, "We need justice, not charity." Forgive and forget. Let us move on. Our collective will asserts, while we forget that before someone can forgive, someone has to express remorse. We retreat into narrower identities. Yet there is reason to hope. When my book was announced, a columnist in Mumbai asked me, "So your book will be about business." I said, "Yes, but also about food and the arts and the diaspora and sport and faith and love and hatred. For we carry in our psyche all these emotions." "But you will write about Ambani and Adani," she asked me. "Yes, but also about Tata and Godrej." I said, "Yes." And she said, "Yes, but Tatas are Parsis." I said, "Yes, but Zoroastrianism is a faith, not a language, and Gujarati is a language, not a religion." I explained how Manmohan Singh and Ziaul Haq were both Punjabis, just as Mamta Banerjee and Hasina Wajed were both Bengalis, just as Mohandas Gandhi and Muhammad Ali Jinnah were both Gujarati. We need to reassert that idea that a language is not faith, it is not caste, it is not gender, nor is it class. The way it gets used represents those divisions which we have created. The stubborn insistence that my ancestor Mansukh Ram Tripathi showed towards making Gujarati purer and rooted in Sanskrit may have created what he considered a pristine and pure form of the language. But it did alienate some people. It left some people out of the conversation. As critics like Sonal Shukla and Riho Isaka have noted and explained, it meant that Dalits, Muslims and Parsis, who use different phrases and words, got crowded out. We might celebrate Ardeshar Khabardar's line, "Jyan jyan vase ek Gujarati, tyan sadakal Gujarat." But despite Behramji Malbari's loving account of us as people, we aren't always sure where Parsis belong. Are they Gujarati or are they from Gujarat? Indeed, it shows us a central conundrum of who a Gujarati is. The assumption we make and others make about us is that we are vegetarian, prosperous, non-violent, cheerful, open-minded, tolerant, and go overseas to become rich. Women are safe on our streets, and we welcome outsiders. And yet, as I probed and drew on my lived experience, I found exceptions to all those rules. For the we that we spoke about were not a collective we, but a narrower identity. Dominant caste Gujaratis and Jains collectively form less than 10% of the Gujarati society. Dalits, Muslims, Parsis, Christians, Adivasis, nomadic communities, denotified tribe, whom Mittal Patel calls Sarnamu Vagarna Manas. And indeed Rajputs and Patels, many of whom defy the norm of who we mean as we. So I decided to tackle the dilemma head-on in naming our chapters like this. Rich like us, Bhatiyas and Lohanas. Richer than us, Jains. We love them and we hope they like us, Parsis. As a nod to the American chain Toys R Us, the chapter on Patels is called Patels R Us. Not equal to us, Dalits. Left behind us, Adivasis and denotified tribe. Neither them nor us, the pastoral nomadic communities. Them, not us, Muslims. Then what is left of us if we do that? My aim was to provoke us into thinking how we began to retreat from a broad, open outlook to a harsher and shrill and narrower identity. Why and how? What shaped our consciousness? I turned to the history as it was taught to us at school, but also by our parents and elders, and by the bhats and charans, the troubadours, who recall stories of sultans raiding temples and Baharwati as providing justice. It took me to Somnath as I tried to understand what could have happened when the first it was Muhammad Ghazni, then Alauddin Khilji, and later Aurangzeb, who attempted but did not succeed in destroying the temple. It was important to know that Somnath was attacked. It was equally important to remember that people on that coast of Saurashtra could distinguish between the raider who came on horses to steal and plunder and the trader who came to the sea and settled. Those traders who were also Muslim were not harmed, their places of worship stayed. But Somnath gripped our collective consciousness, and our collective amnesia erased the syncretic relationships. And the nostalgia about that period of Solanki age shaped our mind, which Kanhaiyalal Munshi wrote about so vividly, calling it Gujaratni Asmita. Somnath became crucial in our understanding of Asmita. We longed for an imagined, glorious past that existed before those invasions. Before the Sultanates ruled India, before the Sultanates ruled Gujarat, there was a Solanki rule, which Gujaratis have come to believe in the region as the region's golden age. Built on legends and myths and stirring stories, its greatest chronicler was indeed Munshi. The Solanki declined, and the repeated attacks on the temple cast a dark shadow, and with all nostalgia, a remembrance became selective. He articulated the idea in an influential essay, Gujaratni Asmita, in 1939, giving the idea political purpose and rationale. He noted how the British looked down upon Gujaratis and why it was time for Gujaratis to assert themselves. The essay urged Gujaratis to reflect on our cultural sensibilities, historical character, and political identity. Somnath was a metaphoric center, and it was why Somnath was chosen by the BJP leader Lal Krishna Advani to embark on his campaign to liberate the site of Babri Masjid in 1990. The campaign was meant to reclaim Hindu pride, and it would start at the location that Munshi had glorified as the birthspot of Gujarati Asmita. And so it was that the movement that would rip apart the collective, inclusive Gandhian idea of India had begun on that calm coast. But as we come to the end of the talk, let us unpack that word Asmita a little bit to understand the true meaning of the word that has been politicized. I came to this city and met my friend, Gujarat's jewel and intellectual giant, Sitanshu Yashashchandra. What does Asmita mean? It has been defined as identity and pride, a term we flaunt to distinguish ourselves from others. But what is it anyway? Sitanshu told me, the origin of Asmita is the word as, which means to be or to exist. It is at the root of the word asti and astitva, or existence. Asti is a third person singular, focusing on him and not on me. The first person singular is asmi, which means am, as in I am. Both the words are important here. Asmita can thus be seen as the identity of oneself. It means being aware of oneself. It reminds us of our forms of us to be. While the word centers on the self, it is rooted in awareness and not in pride. Obsessive self-awareness can lead to arrogance and hubris. At his home in suburban Mumbai, the nonagerian Gujarati historian Nagindas Sanghvi, who died in 2020, soon after turning 100, referred to the sage Patanjali, who had lived 2,500 years ago, and composed a classical text called Yoga Sutra. Patanjali warned us about Asmita's ugly manifestation, which is ahamkar, or arrogance. In Gujarati, we refer to it as hupano. It reveals glorification, which is unbecoming of a gentleman, Sanghvi told me. Asmita is a pride in being who you are, but it does not mean narcissism. In their introduction to the King of Kings, the translation of Kanhaiyalal Munshi's novel Rajadhiraj, Rita and Abhijit Kothari write, it is the consciousness of being in a quiet way, but which gets noisy when used as posturing and pitted against other identities. I went to Thangad, where I met the eloquent writer, raconteur, humorist, comedian and teacher philosopher Shahabuddin Rathod. He was wearing his copyright cowboy hat. Framed watercolor landscapes which he had painted lined up his walls. He told me, the question of Asmita is really about how we live, and the only answer is love. Dedicating yourself without any expectation through our speech, thought and practice, that is our Asmita. Seeing truth as it is, that is our Asmita. That and karuna or compassion. But isn't Asmita pride? I asked him. Pride comes out of passion, and passion is all about emotion. We have to overcome the passion. There is another emotion, karuna, and you find it where there is truth and love. That is born through wisdom and knowledge, and our word for that is prajna. That is wisdom. That is Asmita, and inshallah, we won't lose it, said the man who moved so effortlessly within a sentence from a Sanskrit word and an Arabic wish, personifying the Gujarati Asmita I'd taken for granted, but which seemed to be vanishing. The trajectory of Asmita from self-awareness to arrogance is also the trajectory of modern society. The new Gujarati pride is less about a sense of fulfillment of having reached greatness and more about how far we have left others behind. That begs the question, who are those others? Was Gujarati Asmita a broad, expansive vision, or was it retreating? When the essayist Ishwar Bhai Patel, who wrote under the pseudonym Ishwar Pitlikar, visited East Africa in 1960, he was dismayed. At the Patel Samaj in Mombasa in Kenya, he said, I meet Patels, Baniyas, Kathiawardis, but I don't meet a single Gujaratis. I spoke to the Patel Samaj, ate with Brahmins, took part in religious activities at Kathiawadi Samaj, but could not find the Gujarati Samaj. An early literary reference to Asmita is found in the poetry of Narmad. But in his song Jai Jai Garvi Gujarat, Narmad describes Gujarat's geographic frontiers. Ambaji in the north, Mahakali in the east, Kunteshwar Mahadev in the south and near Vapi and Valsad, and Somnath and Dwarka on the west. Narmad describes his feelings towards Swadeshabhiman, the word Abhiman or pride features. In another poem he writes, Tapi Dakshin Tat Suraj, Muj Ghayal Bhumi, Mane Ghanu Abhiman Bhoy Tari Me Chumi. By kissing the ground, Narmad was connecting himself with his land. In another important poem, Koni Koni Che Gujarat, to whom does Gujarat belong? He turns away from caste, religion and divinities and asserts that Gujarat belongs to those who speak Gujarati, who observe Arya Dharma of all varieties, and as he added crucially, also those who are foreigners but nurtured by this land, and to those who follow other religions but are well-wishers of Mother Gujarat. The reference to Arya Dharma made Gujarat a natural home for Hindus, but if others loved Gujarat, they too were Gujaratis. In Garvi Gujarat, Narmad traces that identity to the language. Gujarat is where Gujarati is spoken, and Gujarat is the one who speaks and is proud of it. Narmad spoke of faith, but with the echoes of the spirit of integrationist lyrics of the medieval era poet Narsi Mehta, whose devotional song Vaishnav Janto Tenere Kahiye was Gandhi's favorite hymn. It is to Mehta's words that Sitanshu turned after that to trace the dawns of modern thought in Gujarat. Those verses shaped our identity and values, revealing the inclusive, welcoming nature. Narsi Mehta moved the individual to the collective. It was a move from the first person to the third person plural, Asti and Santi. Asmita is incomplete without Astita, Sitanshu said. Equality was at the core of Narsi's thinking. Paksha Pakshi Tyani Parmeshwar Samadrashti Sarvasaman. He wrote in another verse, there cannot be God where there is partisanship. He lived in Junagadh in the 15th century. Picture him living for his morning ablutions in the Damodar Kund, as he writes, Giri tale tyan kund Damodar, tyan Mehtaji nahava jai, Harijano ma drad hari bhakti te prem dhari ne lagya paye. Below the hills is the Damodar pond, where Narsi Mehta goes for a bath. He sees firm devotion among Dalits and lovingly touching his feet on the path. Naat na janu, jaat na janu kai vivek vichar, kar jodi ne kare Narsaiyo, Vaishnav teno mane adhar. I don't know caste, I don't know creed, I know the idea of respect. Asmita was about that shared humanity. Narsi Mehta instinctively understood it, and he respected the dignity of individual. He influenced Gandhi, and at the heart of Gandhi's Asmita was a notion of dignity, which he upheld even as he was tossed out of a train compartment in Pietermaritzburg. South Africa had opened his mind. There he met Indians who did not speak Gujarati, and he discovered an India beyond Gujarat and Bombay. He reflected on the shared humanity. At a speech in London, he told Gujaratis that while Gujaratis should take pride in language and culture, they must not forget that the place is a language which has been shared by three great religions, Hinduism, Islam and Zoroastrianism. Govardhan Ram Tripathi, whose magnum opus Saraswati Chandra explored the dilemma of a sensitive, wealthy aristocrat who was troubled by inequity and despaired over his inability to change it. Gandhi was profoundly influenced by that novel, and in particular the sacrifice by the personal for the social. Saraswati Chandra examined life. Is spirituality worth pursuing? Do you sever ties with the world? Can a man choose to be an ascetic while living in a family? In attempting to push the boundaries, it explored widow remarriage, women's education and emancipation, the clash between those educated in English and the traditional rulers, and how single women could be effective in a society. But it did not push the idea far enough that could destabilize the society. His heroine Kumud Sundri, who was once engaged to marry Saraswati Chandra but ultimately could not, was a widow. Saraswati Chandra was single, and fate had brought them together. But instead of a marriage that would have revolutionized the society, he avoided the question by having Saraswati Chandra marry Kumud's sister, Kusum. Govardhan Ram accepted the limits that society placed on women. He raised questions and he wanted his readers to decide. He wasn't going to preach. That restraint recognizing limits was another manifestation of Asmita. So Narsi's medieval Gujarat embraces Dalits. Narmad's 19th century Gujarat has room for all faiths, and for Tripathi, the women are educated. Asmita's political tragedy, from restraint to assertion, from humility to swagger, from inclusive to exclusivity, and from pride to arrogance, parallels the path of Gujarat's recent history. Asmita became a rallying cry, challenging those conspiring to prevent Gujarat from reaching its former glory. When environmentalists criticized the construction of Narmada dams because of the environmental and social costs, Gujarati politicians across parties called it an attack on Gujarati Asmita. In 2002, after there was global criticism over the massacres in Gujarat, Chief Minister Narendra Modi responded with a Gaurav Yatra, where he invoked Gujarati pride and its Asmita, suggesting that an attack on him was an attack on all Gujaratis. The violence of 2002 was not unique, but it laid down new rules. One night over dinner, someone told me, "ए लोकोने सिद्धा करवानी जरूरत थी." They needed to be straightened out. Another night, one of the guests at a dinner I was at told me, "साहेब बिल्कुल साची बात कहो. Can I tell you something true? પહેલા મનસુખ મહમ્મદથી બીતો હતો, હવે મહમ્મદ મનસુખથી ડરે છે." He said with glee, explaining how in the past a Hindu called Mansukh would be scared of a Muslim called Muhammad, but today reverse was the case. I hadn't heard such sentiments in Gujarati homes. Did I live in a bubble? Had another world emerged? Or had politics changed so much that bigotry was respectable and could be flaunted? Taking pride in scaring others, who was us? Who were them? How could someone from Gandhi's state say this? Was I the outsider looking in, living in a cocoon? Or were the insiders looking out at me and laughing at me? Was Gandhi's Asmita wrong? Had we abandoned it? Did he shape Gujarat? Or did Gujarat take a different form? The Gandhian scholar Tridip Surud once put it to me, the advent of Gandhi in the political culture of Gujarat was accompanied by the emergence of Munshi, whose vision was quite contrary to both Gandhi and Tripathi. This cultural vision, which Gujarat made its own, is fantastic. It is based in an imaginary past and seeks to create a cultural identity based on the imaginary notions of past glory, signified by the word Asmita, which captures the imagination of Gujarat from the late 80s. That world may be feudal, non-democratic, since it is based neither on the present nor the past and makes no demands on people. It has an agency for everyone, modern or otherwise. The cultural sense today is formed neither by Govardhan Ram nor by Gandhi, but by Munshi. Asmita depends on a concept. Tridip told me when I met him at his office at Sabarmati Ashram, where for some years he was a director and an archivist. Pride is fine, but arrogance, is it part of the pride? Identity is great to have, but does it lead to narrowness? Consciousness is desirable, but does it make you self-righteous? And conscience, is it exclusive or is it inclusive? My uncle, Kulin Chandra Yagnik, who retired as Gujarat's education secretary and later set up a university in Patan, was sitting on his creaking old swing at his home in Nadiyad when he told me, "I would view the past or even Asmita as a rear view mirror of a car. It is extremely essential in the car and it is good to look at it from time to time, but only for brief glances. If you're lucky, it helps you to be sure that the past doesn't overtake you. Otherwise, it can be an obstacle in your future." And if we only look back and forward, we miss the landscape around us. During one of our conversations in Ahmedabad, Ghanshyam Shah, the sociologist, told me, "We establish family norms and expect others to obey based on literature like Saraswati Chandra, which imposes rules about what joint family should look like. But Asmita is not static, it changes. It is our construct, and we construct it differently each time. If you don't find an answer to your question about what is Asmita," he told me, "that is fine. That itself is an answer. To say that there is only one answer to everything is wrong. We have to celebrate our plurality." Shuchi Kothari, who is Gujarati and grew up in Ahmedabad, studied in the US and now lives in New Zealand, and wrote the screenplay of the haunting film about the violence of 2002, Firak. She told me, "Gujarati Asmita matra ek nathi, anek che. Jetla Gujarati che, etli Asmita che. Gujarat does not have one Asmita, it has as many Asmitas as there are Gujaratis." The great Gujarati poet Umashankar Joshi titled one of his poems Vishwamana. a nod to the universalism inherent in human beings, acknowledging the streams of influence that have enriched our identity. He asked in one of his poems, "Evo te kevo Gujarati je hoy keval Gujarati? What kind of a Gujarati is a mere Gujarati?" It was in the same spirit as what Rudyard Kipling, the English writer born in India, had written. What do they know of England who only England know? The Marxist Caribbean scholar C.L.R. James drew on that and said, what do they know of cricket who only cricket know? Kipling saw the races as apart and was a champion of the empire. James saw the folly of the empire and saw the desire to excel at cricket, a kinness among the colonies to get the empire to see them as equals. Troubled by the narrowness and xenophobia latent within the nationalistic ideals, Rabindranath Tagore wrote in one of his essays on nationalism, warning societies of the danger of clinging to constricted identities. That made Tagore Vishwamana, the man of the world, or what the Indonesian writer Pramodya Anantatur calls Anak Samua Bangsa, the child of all nations. Indeed, what kind of a Gujarati is a mere Gujarati? Narsi Mehta had spread his arms wide to welcome everyone. Narmad looked at the expanse and indicated markers. Tripathi meditated on an individual struggle and against forces that made personal freedom subservient to the societal good. Gandhi unshackled the individual and shaped our collective. Ravi Shankar Maharaj made sure we didn't forget the ones being left behind. Uttam Parmar, Martin McMahon, Sonal Shukla forced us to look at those being ignored. Munshi looked at the past and made many of us believe that was the future. It is now up to us to figure out which past we want to embrace as we march towards the future. Thank you. Shall I stay here? Yeah. Please, can you sure. Thank you.
What an enchanting lecture. Once, a round of applause once again. Thank you, Professor Tripathi, for showing us the mirror of the last 5,000 years, probably showing us what kind of Gujarati we are, what inheritance we have. Being a Gujarati, either if you're born or not in this place. On a personal note, probably we'll be much more prouder of my better half as a Gujarati. And to bring the topic of MS University, as I used to joke, like I'm a Maharashtrian born in Mumbai, and I met my wife, who's a Gujarati, in basically from Saurashtra in Gujarat. So I used to call it, we are an MSU, which is a Maharashtra-Saurashtra Union.
Yes.
So this is exactly how most of us in Baroda are. And the way you expressed was absolutely great, and you posed some very great questions. And maybe when we are going back, we not just heard you, but probably each one of us who may have purchased the book, will really be very keen. And if you guys haven't, I think there are books outside waiting to be purchased, and which I'm sure Mr. Tripathi will be keen to sign. So with this, I would like to call upon Sam Khera. Yeah? No, I think, do we have any time for questions? Q&A? No, that's what. So, yes. Do we have? Oh, we do have some questions.
Okay,
so
sure.
Please go ahead. Couple of questions, please.
I think they want a mic here. Yes.
Thank you. A beautiful, colorful, and complex portrait of sort of dialectical contradictions. And I wonder which one do you think speaks out most clearly across the continents to most people who are not Gujaratis? So that's an inherently reductionistic Western question. I apologize for that. But the second part of my question is, what contradiction do you think you are going to miss the most once it recedes into the history of being a Gujarati? So there's so many wonderful elements that you highlighted, and the categories of culture, ideology, food, horizon as it were?
It's a great question, and I'm thinking as I'm listening to you, and I can tell you what my wish is. I don't know what will happen, because what will happen is not in anyone's hand. My wish is that we will rediscover that inclusivity, because I've heard some amazing stories while traveling through the country, traveling to the state, of simple, good-natured humanity between the dominant caste and the Dalit, between the urban and the Bhil, between the Kutchi and the Saurashtra Kathiawadi person, and most important, between the Hindu and the Muslim. And I think those divides have to be bridged, and we have to rediscover the kind of good. I mean, this state was shaped by Gandhi for a long time, and we have to retrace and reclaim that past. The mic should go to the gentleman there, yeah.
But I think inclusivity is something which your school taught you, Salil, isn't it?
Yeah, and your school, yes.
That was our basic ethos
Absolutely.
on which New Era worked. And there was a very different kind of pride in Gujarati, being Gujarati, that our school taught us. I think we should speak about it. The school started as a Gujarati medium school for all the people being Gujarati and parents not having learned English to join. And then English was a language. And from the 5th standard to the 6th to the 7th and 8th, in the 8th standard it became an English medium school, with Gujarati being one of the languages. It made us very universally acceptable, made our homes comfortable. Had pride in Gujarati language. I think he can speak a bit more about it. Probably Narendra Bhai should introduce that model all over again in the whole of the Gujarat to make us very good with English, which is our challenge now, and not forget our Asmita.
Absolutely, I can't agree with you more. Kanti Bhai Vyas and Magan Bhai Vyas, the two from Bharuch, from Edsi, which is where they came from, built an amazing school, built on two pillars, Gandhi and Tagore. And you can't do, I mean, what more can a school teach us except from these two gentlemen?
I think we probably are running short of time. I'm sorry, I don't want to, you can probably engage with them a little more after this. I think one legacy, of course, Gandhiji has left behind is prohibition, which a lot of us are handling, but anyway.
So, once again, I thank Professor Tripathi for...
Mr.
Tripathi.
Not yet a professor. Nobody will give me a PhD, so...
Sorry about that.
No,
So, Sam, we come forward, and as a token of appreciation, we'd like to hand over your... So as they go about the logistics, I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank FGI for giving us, being a very partner and giving us the facility here to provide this lecture. The Navratna University for all the hospitality, Dr. Gauri Krishnan for the help with the presentation, and the doctor as well. And of course, Mr. Parimu in absentia, giving thank yous for his presence. So, and thank you, Raj Mataji, for being present here in the audience and gracing us with your blessings. So with this, we'd like to have Samit here present as a token of appreciation.
Thank you so much.
With this, we come to today's end of the lecture. Please.
Yeah.
And I think Mr. Tripathi is available after the event. We can have a one-on-one with him, and he's also there available to sign the book. All right, great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.